SJ. Welcome to Muskogee Radio, your weekly source for tribal and community news, interesting guests and discussions, plus a local events calendar. SJ, Stone Go, Gary 5, Johu Jifkados. Welcome to our program, Muskogee Radio, here on 1240 The Brew. Beautiful day, a cool day actually, cool and crisp morning here in Muskogee, and folks in the newsroom, that's an inside joke, so don't pay any attention. We have an interesting discussion, a couple of discussions lined up today. First of all, we'll be speaking with Mr. Thomas Yahola, a National Council member from the Tuckabutchee District, Wetumpka man. He'll be talking about a bill that he authored and introduced to the National Council that did get defeated. But so the subject I thought was of interesting and possible importance that we might spend a little time with it. And then a second portion of our program, we'll speak with James Nichols, who's head of our Emergency Response Team. They just got back Sunday from their trip down to the Houston area and their relief efforts for the folks down there from Hurricane Harvey. And he'll talk about his experiences there and what his crew saw and the kind of things they tackle. But first of all, let's welcome Mr. Yahola. Thank you for making time and coming in, sir. Appreciate it.
Okay, good morning. I thank you for your invitation to speak on this subject.
Okay, now, first of all, before we get off and running here, we want to remind our listeners that this was a piece of legislation that was defeated.
That's correct.
So nobody should get kind of worked up and go charging in there unless they want to see these changes happen, which is a possibility, but right now there is no legislative action going on. Your idea was to change the name of the Muskogee Creek Nation to the Muskogee Nation.
That's correct.
And also affect some changes to its seal, the green one with the wheat shock and a plow. But first of all, Let's start with the legislative stuff right now. Let people know what the bill number was and what happened to it, first of all, before we get into motivations here.
Well, thank you. I introduced NCA 17-138 to the BF&J committee, and it was on the agenda. The chairman brought it up to be addressed, and there was a motion for a due pass. It did not get a second, so there was no discussion, and so that was it, for that, for that meeting. And since there was no action taken, it was brought up again in the following month. And at that time, there was a due pass, and I had a little presentation that I gave, and then it passed, 2-1. So, and I heard some of the concerns that they had, and so I had thought about it, and I said, well, that's good because it will be on the agenda. And in the meantime, they did have some questions about how it would be implemented. And so then when we got to the National Council meeting, I offered NCA 17-138 substitute bill. And this here had some of the changes that were addressed in that committee meeting. And I wanted to say first that I wanted to replace Muskogee Creek Nation with Muskogee, spelt Mvskoke. And the name Creek was imposed on us, by others. And the reason for that is because they could not pronounce the tribal town names that existed along the rivers and the creek. So therefore, Creek was derived by by others, the non-speaking Anglo society. And so it was more or less kind of imposed upon us, and we more or less adopted it. Now, Muskogee, spelt just like I did, comes from, now if you're familiar with the Muskogee alphabet, that was adopted in NCA 9727. It adopted the alphabet. If you're familiar with the alphabet, it has 19 characters, but the letter G is not listed as part of our alphabet. So if you look at it, our name spelling is not does not comply, with the alphabet. And also Creek was imposed on us by Anglo people, and so I felt like there needed to be changed to be what we call politically corrected. And so, but I had introduced this, before in years before, and I had a lot of support, from we had more elders at that time. But since then, a lot of those have passed on, and I did not probably have I lost a lot of support, through that. But hopefully this would get to, past council, and I would have time to, if it did pass, I would have time to, promote it. But also wanted to say, too, that some of the issues that came up, and I said first in this substitute bill, I said the name change will be a gradual process and would not be disruptive. And it is not the intent to create a financial burden. And also said, too, that current contracts, agreements, and other legal documents with the name Muskogee Creek Nation shall remain valid until expiring on their own terms. And also, in that substitute bill says, the name Muskogee Creek Nation currently owned buildings, monuments, and fixed plaques can remain. Name change is optional. And the other change, the name Muskogee Creek Nation currently on tribal employee shirts or uniforms or tribal vehicles shall remain until replacing and reordering. So I believe this substitute bill did address some of the concerns, that the committee, had and the National Council.
Now, you've covered quite a bit of territory, and it really sounds well thought out. Let's take a second here, though, and drop back in history. Now, you mentioned a couple times the name being imposed by Anglo sources. It was my understanding that British settlers kind of named us all because we lived near creeks. Is that correct as far as?
Yes, that's correct. And so, I'm real compassionate about our culture, about our language, and about our alphabet. And this is what I put into this bill. I put everything that I had into it. And it's unfortunate that others did not feel this compassion or share the cultural values, that I have and others have, about this name change.
Let me ask you about those values now. Those often always, gosh, I can't even say it, come from family, from the culture that you're born into and you lived in. You were raised primarily as a Muskogee kid.
That's right.
And is that the language that was primarily spoken in your home?
By both sides of my family, yes.
Okay, and English was used when it needed to be?
Yes, and English was a primary language also.
Okay, was religion a factor there in your life there?
Yes, it was. I was brought up in the church. Mm-hmm. And then later I started attending the, ceremonial, grounds. Mm-hmm. And there the language is used exclusively. And so that is part of our culture also. And, we hear in the committee and we hear in National Council in consensus is that we support our cultural values. And this name change is a cultural value also. It belongs to the Muskogee people. And so, we should be proud of ourselves, by by referring ourselves as Muskogee people as a whole, but as individuals, we identify ourselves as being from a particular, tribal town.
Mm-hmm.
That's our first identification, and then as Muskogee people as a whole.
The development and evolution of our people has considerably changed the amount of culture that people bring
Yes.
with them. These days, you've got Muskogee people who really know nothing about their own people, their own language, or things like that, but are members and associate as Muskogee people. Now, would this change, do you think, have some effect on those kinds of folks who are distant from Muskogee?
Yes, yes, I hope so. I hope so because, biblically, God gave us a language, and we're to use that language. And I had a thought some time ago, and I read a Uchi magazine, and this lady shared the same view that I did. And in judgment, God will ask us in our language, what did we do well in the life that He gave us, in our destiny? Did we do that? And how are we going to answer Him? Are we going to answer in our native language or in the English language?
Now, that's an interesting thought, and forgive me, I'm not being blasphemous or anything, but the thought just popped into my head, seeing Jesus walk up and say, "Hesche, Stongo,"
Yes,
and Muskogee, and communicating with other people there. An interesting thought there. Now, the idea, as you said and described, had a bit of a rough path
yes,
in getting to the floor of the council chambers.
Yes.
Now that represents to me some opposition, some folks who said maybe this isn't such a good idea. Now, do you recall any of the kinds of things they were brought up? You seem to have covered them here.
yes.
But maybe you could recount some of the things you ran into.
Well, I did not, contact the National Council members individually, for their support. And I hope in them reading this substitute bill, well, I even brought the amendments up in pre-agenda to the, full council of the changes. And so I felt like it was up to them, to search themselves to see if this here, should pass. And then it would set, hopefully, the path for future generations. And this name Muskogee, spelled now, is utilized by the Muskogee Dome, Muskogee Nation Honor Guard, and even on your shirt, Muskogee Media, Muskogee Youth Council, Muskogee Festival. So it's been utilized by programs already. And so I've seen that they have realized that hopefully this proposed name Muskogee is fitting for us, and they should have had the opportunity as a people to vote on this, I believe. Mm-hmm. But that opportunity was not given to them because it did not pass the National Council with the votes required.
Now, the one thought that just kind of flickered through my mind was, would this have any effect on other places that have not really a strong affiliation with our people here? I'm thinking of the city of Muskogee, or even to an extreme, that old Merle Haggard tune, Okie from Muskogee.
I don't know about those issues, I haven't thought about that. Mm-hmm. I just thought about what belongs to us as Muskogee people. Mm-hmm. And then we should protect and cherish, the language and the alphabets, that we have as people. Mm-hmm. And that's what I truly believe, and that's my compassion.
Right.
And I hope this compassion would have runs throughout the nation, even though that I live in a full-blood environment, that others that do not might share the same compassion, because that's our people.
How would you describe those environments then? First of all, I presume that it is strongest in the southern regions of the nation. and the northern side, from Muskogee north to Tulsa and around there, would not be as strong because it's not as immersed
Yes.
daily into it. So, does that have any negative effect, do you think, on people who are not as close?
They're just not aware of the tradition that exists in the South. Living in Wetumpka, I worked in Tulsa for a number of years and retired from the Corps of Engineers even. But I didn't want to move to Tulsa. When I was selected for the job there in Tulsa, I told my children, I said, well, I have a job in Tulsa, and we're going to live here, and I'm going to go back and forth, and that's the end of the story. Because I wanted to live here within my own people. I want to live in this full-blooded environment that I live in, and I want you to live there so that you can learn the values of our people.
They must have worn out a couple of vehicles.
Well, that's all right, but that was my choice,
Uh-huh.
and it hadn't been a bad choice at all.
The support you got was primarily from older folks and things like that.
Yes.
But in the last several years, let's call it the last decade, we've seen a resurgence of interest from the youth, from the young people.
Yes.
Will you, I guess, take this question to them and ask them for their support if it were to resurface at some point?
Well, I don't know if it's going to resurface or not because my term is coming to an end in December, and I don't know who in time will have this same kind of compassion that I have, for this proposed change.
Well, that'll get decided here in the next couple of weeks, I guess.
Well, that's right too, but I don't know what their compassion is for.
Sure.
For a name change such as this.
When you learn of the interest those young people have, like the Muskogee immersion camps they had up at Sequoia State
Yes.
Park. I went up and covered those a couple times for articles. It filled my heart with joy to
Yes.
see these young people just bursting with pride and interest. Now, how does that affect you?
Well, let me say it this way. The language is it comes within the family. It comes within the family. But I have a young grandson that was going to Head Start, and I saw that compassion in him. And he was on the winning Challenge Bowl, for his age group. And so that group did real well. They won first place. But I continued to work with him on the language that I knew. And then he goes to a native church, and he's learned their songs. And then I've been teaching him, the language. But now that he's, kind of going to another school, I don't have that close relationship with him. And so I asked him, I said, do you remember the words that we knew or that I taught you before? And then he's kind of said, well, I forgot. And so, he's the one that I'm looking at to, kind of, to carry on.
Sure.
But I said, you better learn these words or learn how to talk because you might be the last person that has knowledge or some knowledge of this language and the songs.
Right, and don't let those other distractions.
That's right. That's right.
The other part of our discussion was regarding the seal of the Muskogee Nation. When you look at it from a distance and say you're not part of the tribe or something like that, it doesn't really, for me, it didn't really reflect a kind of Indianness, so to speak. I looked at dozens of other tribal seals around the nation, and it may be like a eagle feather lance or the Zuni
yes.
sunburst.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, but this one was a shock of wheat and a plow.
Yes.
But I understand, of course, our long history of agriculture and
Yes.
being one with the soil and how important it is. So, but I'm thinking somehow, I guess, maybe it should have reflected a little more of its native culture there.
Well, I have the same idea. I have another idea for the seal, but I'm not going to pursue it.
Mm-hmm.
But, if you look back in the Harjo and Cleppy case, the nation was declared a nation because the tribal towns were in existence, and the government recognized that. And so the existence of the tribal towns and the ceremonial grounds is what makes the decision that the court, did. And so, yes, I think that the seal, should be changed, but I have my own ideas, but I'm not going to pursue that because I will probably experience the same thing that I just experienced, with this name change.
Okay, and you've had enough headaches with it already. The idea, though, is intriguing, but you can't help but think it would probably aggravate a lot of folks.
Yes.
Do you think so? I mean, to change the things that have been here and been seen and recognized.
Well, that's right too. But if they would have been brought up in a full-blooded environment, as myself, then they might have a different point of view.
Mm-hmm. So is there room for those who weren't brought up in a full-blood?
Oh, yes, there's always room. There's always room for that. Just go down to the ceremonial grounds or go to the native churches, sit in, enjoy yourself, learn, and appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. Now, this might be confusing to our Staheki brethren around the nation. Here in Oklahoma, Tulsa, here in Muskogee. Should they be, I guess, more understanding of the idea or not be afraid of it, perhaps, is maybe what I'm asking there. It would seem like a real change from something they're familiar with to this Indian thing, kind of, so to speak.
Well, we need to have control of our own destiny.
Yeah.
That would be my answer. It's up to us as a sovereign nation to determine, what we want for ourselves and for our people.
Mm-hmm. And going along with that, we would invite our neighbors and the community then to understand and join in with us in this return to a tradition there.
That's right. That's correct.
Now, the future, we'll see a lot of changes. We're seeing, of course, elections coming up and things like that. But do you think this kind of importance on tradition and culture will remain? Do you see that being a pillar of political platforms, do you think?
Well, they say that we support, our cultural, values. They can be supportive, but I think it takes more initiative to pursue endeavors, like this. And like I say, it takes compassion, a compassionate person that has a love for his people and his language and his culture to pursue an endeavor such as this. And so, only time will tell.
Mm-hmm. Now, I know there are people who are out there that are thinking, well, it's a nice idea, but my God, it would be expensive. Were those kinds of things running through your mind when you first thought of it? And I would assume people would raise that as an objection. But your substitute bill says gradual change.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
But had you thought about how much it might cost to do that and repaint the trucks and the stationery?
Well, no. It wouldn't be disruptive if they just, as I said, just do it. When they reorder or replace. And like I said here, it's optional. So there was no, and I said here I did not want to create a financial burden.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So I wouldn't have to go out and buy a new flag if I don't want to.
That's right. Just when they replace them, then they can make the change and then purchase them after then.
Okay, so we can still wear our T-shirts. and
Yes,
things
that's
like
right. You can wear them forever now.
that. Okay, now, Mr. Yahola, as you mentioned a lot earlier, you are winding down your term
Yes.
as a council representative. Do you plan on returning to or attempting another election at some point?
No, no. I've already made up my mind that I've served my time. I've always wanted to do something for the nation, and being on the national council has been an answer to that. And like life, it has ups and downs, but still yet I've enjoyed every minute of it. I surely have, and so I don't have any regrets. I'm just pleased that I have had that opportunity, and I'm pleased to. I can't say any more than that. I'm just pleased. Well, I'm pleased that God made me a Muskogee citizen.
Oh, yeah.
I am pleased that He made me a Muskogee citizen. And I talked to some of my cousins the other day, and I said, God made us Muskogee people, and we look at this, the color of our skin, and that tells us what God made us, and that's what we are to do. And so that's what I believe.
Okay, we do. Thomas Yahola, thank you so much for coming in and talking about this subject, and remind our listeners it was defeated on the council floor, so there's nothing.
And one more thing.
Yes, sir.
And good morning, National Council staff. Keep up the good work. Thank you.
Yeah, a bunch of good folks over there. Okay, Mado, sir.
Okay.
We'll take a short pause here, and we'll be back with James Nichols and talk about his experiences down with Hurricane Harvey. So stay with us here on 1240 The Brew.
I just got kicked out of my house.
My girlfriend just broke up with me.
I'm worried I might hurt
I
myself.
feel so alone. Are you there?
I'm here. Here for you anytime, anywhere, 24/7.
If you need help or know someone who needs help, please text CREEK to 741-741 from anywhere in the U.S. anytime about any type of crisis. A live trained crisis counselor will receive the text and respond quickly. No judging, just support during any type of crisis. Just text CREEK to 741-741. When suicidal behaviors are detected early, lives can be saved. Get free support at your fingertips 24/7 from the National Crisis Text Line. Help is available for anyone, anytime, anywhere. For more information about the prevention of suicide, or if you or someone you know needs help, please text the word CREEK to 741-741. This message is brought to you by Muskogee Creek Nation Behavioral Health. Help support suicide prevention.
Snazzy PSA there. We're welcoming to our studios Mr. James Nichols, who is the head of our emergency management team here. Get a chance to catch up on your sleep yet?
Barely.
Barely? Okay. Well, we want to first of all say our hats off to you and a hearty thanks for participating and assisting our neighbors down there and representing the Muskogee Creek Nation. You were part of a crew from several agencies here from the tribe that went down. Is that correct?
Correct. Our emergency management department and our light horse police department put a 10-man crew together to go down and collaborate our efforts to help those that were affected by Hurricane Harvey in Houston.
Okay. Now, what was the initiative, the motivation for this effort?
Well, I think the motivation was the number of resources that we have between the two departments, our equipment, the boats, the trailers, the ATVs, and just the overall willingness to want to go and help those that were affected.
Was there an administrative suggestion, perhaps, that you go down and do that?
No, actually, it was Chief Hawkins, myself. We saw the need. We heard the cries for help from the state of Texas, the city of Houston, Harris County, and we just started gathering up, and then Chief Hawkins, I believe, took that to Chief Floyd, and we made things happen, and we're on a Monday, and we left at just a little after 6 o'clock on Tuesday.
Okay, I've been following the subject somewhat, and I understand two other tribes had sent crews down there, the Cherokees and the Quapaws. Did you run into those other guys while you were there?
Absolutely. Qualpaws were there when we arrived Tuesday evening, and actually Wednesday morning, our first mission, we helped the Qualpaws. They wanted, I guess you could say, a security detail on each boat that went out, and so one of our light horse officers, James Lane, went with the Qualpaw tribe and provided that protection for them as they went out and did their missions.
I presume then he was armed.
Yes, yes.
Okay, just for hopefully it never got needed.
Never was needed. And the neighborhoods that we were in, we were always safe. It was just one of those precautions that we took, that every agency that was there took. Just because you never know what you're going to run into.
Well, they're dangerous. Got 4 legs, 2 legs. They're long,
Exactly.
reptilian tail. Or something.
Exactly.
The assignments you had, I guess, were varied, but primarily, what were you doing? We see photos of water rescues and this kind of thing. Was that the way you spent most of your time?
The majority of the time was water rescues and evacuations of those that were in the flooded areas, and then we ended up on our last day, which was Saturday. We changed our mission, and the City of Houston Fire Department, Police Department wanted us to take a 15 square mile section and cover it door to door. But Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, it was complete. Our missions were just going out, finding those that needed to be evacuated, patrolling some of the areas that had already been covered where people had not left and the water was still rising. So we did several evacuations, and we did a few rescues.
What part of this area were you posted to? For folks who aren't familiar with Houston, north, south, east, west?
So I'm guessing they consider it the west side of Houston. We were just right at Interstate 10. We all staged, the Oklahoma crew staged in the Memorial City Mall, the Target parking lot, actually. We were just a few miles west of Interstate 610, which is the loop that goes around the city. So we were primarily from the point that where we were, we headed west almost on every call.
Now, were these residential neighborhoods, or were there commercial districts, or like a mix of the two?
It was a mix of the two. We had single-family dwellings, apartment complexes, and then and there were some industrial and several businesses within that area.
And describe the conditions you had to deal with. We've all seen pictures of people wading through water of various depths. Vehicles that were completely swamped and flooded and things like that. What did you see when you were working there?
The majority of the conditions were high water, some water up to rooftops of homes, lots of vehicles that were submerged or partially submerged. We did come across some areas that were dry, which we called those the islands of the area. But the majority of the homes that we were in contact with were had water in them. Some just a small amount to, like I said, up to the rooftops.
Now, were these areas where there were budgetary, let's just say expensive neighborhoods, or lower income kind of areas? What did you see there? Middle class folks?
We came across a little bit of everything. The majority of what we were in were I would say higher end homes, nice neighborhoods, nice condominiums, and then there were a couple of areas that we went into that we had a few of the passerbys maybe throw up a gang sign or two.
Oh boy.
But nothing that we worried with. Houston is a diverse area. You can drive 2 or 3 blocks and be in a nice neighborhood, and you can drive a couple blocks the other way and be in a not so nice. But the one thing that I'll say is everybody that we came in contact with, and when I mean everybody that we talked to was appreciative of us being from Oklahoma, us being from a tribal nation, and being there to help strangers out.
Did people pick up on the fact that you were representing our tribe? You were the Muskogee people down there?
Absolutely. Every person I think that we came in contact with asked us where we were from, and we were definitely happy to tell them, not only from Oklahoma, but from our tribal nation. It surprised them, I think. And with that being said, this effort that was put forth, speaking with one of the incident commanders in the Oklahoma group, he said that this was the first time in his career, and he's been a firefighter and is now a deputy chief at Oklahoma City Fire Department, that they've ever had state, tribal, and federal officials working such a large incident.
Now, that's a bit surprising. In my limited experience as a PIO with the fire crews in California, we ran across several tribes that had sent teams there and met those guys. California boys called me a flatlander from Oklahoma, but it was interesting. And is this like a growing phenomenon for more tribal presence or participation or perhaps exposure?
I think so. Within the last 10, 12 years, tribal nations have really picked up the pace as far as emergency management and response, and they're being more proactive. Because the emergency management departments within the tribes have grown, they now have the resources, they have the ability and availability to respond to things like this.
Now, I remember meeting some guys from Michigan who were down here for the fire season this year. How cool for those northern boys to come down here and tell us what it's all about.
Exactly.
And they were curious about Oklahoma too, but it was kind of neat to see the Anishinaabes from up there. Now, the pictures we've seen have been heartbreaking of just entire neighborhoods being swamped and things like that. But there were always a few holdouts that someone had to pull their boat up to a front door and get them out. In speaking with them and learning about them, did they tell you why they stayed? That always kind of puzzles me to learn that somebody in facing this crisis or danger or life-threatening, they choose to stay. Did you uncover any of that?
I think the biggest reason why a lot of them stayed is to protect their homes. And then there were several of them that didn't expect water to get as high as it did. The 52 inches of rain fell in that area, and a lot of it was north of the Houston area. So once the lakes and the reservoirs started filling up, they had to start releasing water because the dams and the lakes weren't going to be able to hold it. They were going to start actually flowing over some of the reservoirs. So when they started releasing that water is when the bayous got out of their banks, just on an extreme level. And so places that have never seen water, they're used to flooding in those areas. If they live around that bayou, they're used to having water come up, but it reached some levels that, we talked to some people that had lived there for 32, 33 years, and it had never reached their home, and it was 2-3 foot deep in it.
You mentioned some of the neighborhoods that you worked in, high income kind of thing. And I'm curious to find out whether those residents were astonished to see the water so high in a place where they thought they would be safe forever. All of a sudden, they weren't.
It was amazing how fast the water crept up. I've shared several videos on some time lapses that people had taken of the water rising within a 24-hour period, and watching it come up, from just a trickle down the street to filling complete garages, or floating basketball goals and cars down the road that they caught on video from their surveillance cameras. They weren't expecting it, and honestly, I don't think that anybody had an idea of what 52 inches of rain in that area would do.
Do that to anybody.
Oh, definitely.
Were your teams dealing with life and death situations? Is there a particular incident that comes to mind where you had to deal with that?
I think one of them that really sticks out was a call. Our first call, actually, on Friday morning. We were assigned the task. They said the call came out as a dump truck with several people in it that was floating down one of the streets, was submerged. So we had been in that area the couple of days previously, so we knew the area. We took off. It ended up being 2 City of Houston workers and 5 police officers from Abilene, Texas. They were going in to evacuate some people, and the dump truck had taken on water and actually floated about a half a mile with the 7 people in them. We were able to make contact with them and get them to safety. And then found out while we were sitting there talking to some of the homeowners that actually the first death in Houston happened at the intersection where the dump truck finally stopped. Mm-hmm. It just when they tell us turn around, don't drown, that's exactly what they mean. Because you think a big heavy dump truck will make it through an area, and the city was using dump trucks the whole time we were there to go into some of the high waters to bring people out. But there was a dump truck there that was previous to this incident, and so now there's 2 sitting there side by side.
The officer you mentioned was that Officer Perez, right?
Actually, he wasn't the first one. This was a female that had passed away.
And I understand that number has risen to about 30 or so.
Last I looked, total for Harvey was 64.
Oh my gosh.
About 34 or so in the Houston area, but total about 64 within Houston, Beaumont areas. So.
Mm-hmm. I guess I always like to ask on the flip side of the coin. Was there anything really unusual or even humorous that you ran across a situation that kind of sticks in your mind?
Saturday when we did our door-to-door evacuations, I'm sitting here looking at the numbers that I sent out. We were tasked with going door to door, making contact with every home in an area that they had given us, and we were to put down the number of homes that we contacted, the number of people that we contacted, who was sheltering in place or who was leaving, and then the pets, because pets were becoming an issue at this point of getting them out. And one of the reports that I got back that afternoon was that they had contacted, I think it was 11 people, 2 cats and a bearded dragon.
Oh, God.
So, it's they saw a number of different types of animals that they came in contact with, and if a bearded dragon was the only reptile that we had to deal with, that was a good thing.
Speaking of which, I presume you never ran across any alligators or snakes?
No alligators, no sharks, no snakes.
Yeah, I remember the fake shark photo.
Yeah, we did come across several crawdads and actually some fish that were swimming around in the water, but no reptiles that would have caused us any harm.
I understand somebody ran across a situation where they thought it was an alligator.
Yeah, there's actually a video somewhere on social media that fire department from Oklahoma actually was walking through a yard, and one of them yelled not so nice, explicit, and everybody stopped, and he's frozen while he's looking at a concrete alligator underneath the water. And they actually got some photos of him and the alligator sitting there. So it's you go in with that mindset that there's going to be those things in the water, along with all the other contaminants. So you're definitely on guard while you're in the water.
I understand that. I guess saw some photos of some gators in some people's backyards. And is that going through your mind?
Oh yeah, definitely. And then we jumped out on one evacuation, and one of the homeowners told us that there was 4 or 5 water moccasins that were swimming around in his backyard, and that we needed to be careful. And so, of course, the heightened awareness, our heads were on swivels at that point looking for snakes, but never saw any, so that's a good thing.
Your feet on top of the water?
Yes.
Gosh. I think I could almost deal with a gator better than I could a water moccasin. It's something about those things just gets to me. Now, as you went through the situation, you were there on a 2-week deployment?
We started out for a week deployment with the expectation of being assigned another 7 days, which we spent 6 total, and it's because the reason it was so short is because Oklahoma showed up in force, and we took care of the area that we were assigned, and so once our assignment was complete, the city of Houston Fire Department, Police Department they were able to demobilize everybody from Oklahoma and send them home on Sunday.
You're glad to see that happen.
Absolutely. It's sleeping in a parking lot on a cot or a blow-up mattress. It's like camping, but you're definitely ready to come home and see your family and sleep in your own bed.
Yeah. I spent a couple of weeks on an air mattress in California. Boy, that bed felt good when I got it.
Several of our guys, Chief Hawkins and Deputy Chief Wynn, they slept in their vehicles, and a couple of the guys slept in the command trailer, and then the rest of us kind of made pallets or took our cots or air mattresses and just slept outside, which, it's you sit and think about it. That's what everybody that was affected was going through at that time. They were finding different places to sleep and maintain kind of a halfway normal lifestyle at the time. So it didn't hurt my feelings at all. As long as I had a place to lay my head at night, get a little bit of rest to be ready for the next day, I was good.
You mentioned the rising waters and things like that. And it's always been my understanding that that's a dangerous situation there. The water's contaminated with all kinds of chemicals and human waste and whatever else it picks up. You go through a stockyard and you got all that. But it sounds like you weren't really spending a lot of time in a heavy industrial area or something like that, or not next to the stockyards. But this contamination was on your mind.
Oh yeah, that was one of our first safety thoughts as we were getting to together to deploy was that anybody that was with our group was going to be in a dry suit so that they weren't contaminated. Anytime water floods a city street, you got to remember what runs underneath it, which is our sewer system. And then the number of cars and things that were underneath the water, setting in the water. You're going to get oil and gas and diesel and things, and then you've got to think about what's in the homes that has been flooded and opened up and dumped into the water that's in the flood area. So those dry suits, even though all of us that were in them lost weight because it's nothing but a sweatsuit, it was definitely worth knowing that you didn't have any of that on you when you came back. We decontaminated our gear and got ready for the next day.
Did you have any kind of casualties or medical problems?
With our group, no, not really. We made sure that we stayed fueled up as far as our bodies and hydrated, and other than a couple of little cuts and scrapes on our hands from this, that, or the other, we were good, but we were vigilant about making sure that we kept those clean and covered as we went out on our missions and checked them every night, and actually ended up, a couple of us, myself and Chief Hawkins, super glued our cuts together so that it's the only thing that we could think of to make sure that nothing got into those wounds.
Yeah, if it'll work. Yeah, were there plenty of support services there for you? I remember in California there was a caterer had come in and set up a big kitchen, and actually it had laundry and a couple of things there. Were you in that kind of situation? Did you have that?
That's probably one of the best memories of the whole trip. Oklahoma Task Force 1, which is made up of different agencies throughout the state, Oklahoma City side, Tulsa side. They came in, they set a shower tent up for everybody. We actually helped them Tuesday night get that up and running. First night we kind of ate what we had brought, but from that point on, and I can't remember her name off the top of my head, but there's a lady that lives there in Houston that fed every one of us every day. She had different restaurants cater food in, so it was amazing. I mean, anything from shrimp gumbo to chicken fettuccine to lasagna, we ate very well. And then throughout the day and evening, just citizen after citizen, youth groups, church groups, they were coming through handing out snacks, cookies, brownies, water, Gatorade, any fig bars, whatever we might need. And then we had individuals, matter of fact, we posted on our Facebook site, 3 ladies that came into our camp and took our laundry for us and took it back to their homes and washed them, folded them, and brought them back to us the next morning.
Wow, that's just so heartwarming, the kind of thing. What happens to you now? We're hearing, of course, another hurricane is headed for that region. You just got finished with was the raft race up here or something like that?
Right. So the next hurricane that's coming in, we're just kind of watching it. Talked to Chief Hawkins yesterday, and he's ready to go just as well as I am. I put a message in this morning to the Department of Oklahoma Emergency Management, which is who we work through to go to Houston, and they're working on things. There's agreements that the states have between each other that allow one state to go help the other.
Sure.
So I tell you, when Oklahoma showed up for Hurricane Harvey, I've got this that I've got to tell you. And there's it's a 5-day deployment, and there was 21 different agencies that showed up from Oklahoma. We did 803 evacuations and 45 rescues, 132 pets, That last day, we had 310 personnel, 77 different boats, and we covered 15 square miles in 10 hours.
Oh, gosh.
Contacted 4,200 homes within that 10 hours, going door to door. So that being said, Oklahoma did such a good job. I'm sure that the different states are going to be requesting Oklahoma to come in and help when they have a disaster.
Speaks so well for you guys. James Nichols, thank you for filling us in and sharing this information. It's just amazing the experience that you went through, and makes us proud that you're Muskogean representing us.
We're happy to do it.
Okay, well, we'll be watching the rest of it, and hopefully you'll get to enjoy what little bit of summer we've got left and relax a little bit.
Get a little rest.
You get some sleep. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. James Nichols of our Emergency Response Office. Want to thank him for coming down. We have a few community announcements to share with you, so we'll jump right into those. First of all, going on as soon as this show is over at the College of the Muskogee Nation, there's Win from Within, a blood drive going on there from 11:15 until 2 p.m. at the College of the Muskogee Nation, the classroom by the library here in town. So if you have thought about helping some of our situation or your neighbors with a little bit of blood, now's the time. From the election office to absentee voters, due to an oversight issue on the directions on what writing utensil to use to fill out your absentee ballot, they have a suggestion here. The intended wording of those instructions would ask the voters to fill out the ballot with a black ink pen, no gel pens. So if you've got any questions, give them a buzz, 732-7631. Interested in a job? Macy's is recruiting. They're coming to our area on the 25th to the, I guess, presume it would be the Dome, their fulfillment job fair. All kinds of jobs, picking, shipping, maintenance, engineering, et cetera, salaries from $10.50 to $12.50, or you can go up and apply, or apply online at macysjobs.com. Now that's Monday the 25th. And the health research participants from TU is still going. They're looking for subjects to help them with their study of pain, chronic pain among Native Americans. You're asked to participate in a couple of different sessions. $100 a day will be provided to those who complete each testing session, so there could be a $200 total. You want to get a hold of the University of Tulsa's Psychophysiology Research Laboratory at 918-631-2171. Language classes are starting. They'll be coming up here on the 11th for Head Start students and daycare students. That is on the 11th at several locations. And adult classes open to all will begin on September 12th in the Education Building Language Department. So if you're interested in learning a language, like the beginner that I am, check it out. And it's certainly a fulfilling kind of opportunity. And of course, they have their language app that's available for the iPad, iPhone, and Android devices if you're interested. Of course, our own department has its very popular T-shirts still for sale, other items also. So if you're interested in one of our black T-shirts, you might want to get a hold of, Chelsea at 732-7720, and she will be able to help you. Black T-shirts with incredible designs, mugs, bags. I think the bags are sold out, but mugs are still available in 2 different designs. Okay, Thursday, wrong month. The 16th coming up, our primary elections are coming up, so be sure you are registered and go vote. We want you to take part in that opportunity with Saturday, November 4th, the general election to select our leadership. Okay, I'm just about out of ammo here, so we'll call it a day. This is Gary Fife saying, Mado Mabu Hedget Scott. Catch us next week. You've been listening to Muskogee Radio. Join us again next week for more local, tribal, and community news and updates. Mado.
Join the Brew Crew. You might be our next winner. Text